Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, prosecutors say they'll retry a transient accused of killing a 12-year-old girl. And federal regulators are planning to study cancer risks around the San Onofre nuclear plant.
And I'm Peggy Pico. A local council race takes on citywide importance. Coming up, our mini debate with the candidates.
Also tonight, we'll continue our special report on the new ownership of UT San Diego and their impact on shaping San Diego's future. Local artists combine horror with musical comedy in Evil Dead, the musical. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Irwin Jacobs and by
Hello, good evening. Thanks for joining us. A new trial is planned for a transient accused of killing an Escondido girl 14 years ago. Richard Tewitt was convicted of killing 12-year-old Stephanie Crow, but it was reversed by an appeals court last year. The court said the trial was unfair because the judge limited cross-examination of a prosecution witness. Prosecutors say he will be retried on a charge of voluntary manslaughter. Federal regulators will launch a study to find out whether people living near the San Onofre nuclear power plant have a higher risk of cancer. It will also examine cancer rates at 5 similar plants nationwide. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg joins us from the News Center. Kenny, what's this study all about?
Well, this is a study from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that's going to take a look at cancer risks around 6 different nuclear power plants around the country. The first part of the study will take a look at cancer rates in the general population within a 30-mile radius of the plants. And the second part of the study will take a look at leukemia rates in children who were born near the plants. And
what are some of the challenges to doing such a study?
Well, that's a good question, because trying to ascertain the risks of cancer from any one exposure is very, very difficult. First of all, the latency period between exposure to a carcinogen and developing the disease can take decades. The second thing is you have to factor in different health factors like one's genetics, other health risks, so it's a very complicated equation.
All right, well, we'll, I guess, look forward to the results eventually, right?
Right.
KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg. Coaches and leaders at San Diego's Lincoln High School are being accused of misusing student funds. Our media partner 10 News obtained a school board audit showing student body money being used to buy championship basketball rings for coaches and a now retired executive vice principal. The audit also says Coach Jason Bryant received 10 free pairs of shoes from Nike and sold them to students. Bryant would not talk to 10 News about the audit, but the chair of Lincoln High's site committee says money was stolen from students.
Dollar by dollar, they collected this money thinking that it would be used for the student body. Instead, it's been taken by the adults for championship rings.
The audit calls on Bryant to reimburse the student body fund by more than $2,300. It also calls on the school to keep better records. Barnes & Noble says a data breach may have compromised credit card information of customers at 63 stores, 5 of them in San Diego County. Here's a list of the affected stores. The company says the problem was discovered last month. In each store, it found one compromised PIN pad device used to swipe credit and debit cards. There's no word on how many customers might be affected. The PIN pads have all been disconnected. Barnes & Noble says customers should change their PIN codes and notify their bank if they spot any unauthorized charges. The Mexican government has opened a new border crossing at San Isidro, but using it isn't exactly easy. Getting through requires a stop on Interstate 5 and a steep turn or right turn to get into lanes headed to the new entry. The U.S. still doesn't have the funds to reroute the freeway there. This is part of an overall reconstruction of the San Isidro port of entry. We have an update on an effort to keep La Jolla's main post office from being relocated. It's now getting support from a federal lawmaker. Congresswoman Susan Davis has drafted legislation to allow the Postal Service to sell any office subject to closure to a nonprofit organization at market value. The facility at Wall Street and Ivanhoe has been in La Jolla for 77 years, but the Postal Service is downsizing to save money and wants to move it to a smaller space within a mile. Jim Lantry lives in the neighborhood and says the latest plan would benefit everyone.
If we can preserve the building and provide that smaller space for them that is more optimal to their operations, then everybody wins. If the alternative is for them to sell the building to who knows what and move someplace else in the village where they're going to find that their relocation costs and their cost to rent the space is going to be much, much higher.
The bill has bipartisan support from San Diego's other representatives as well as San Diego City Council. The Postal Service was unavailable for comment on the bill or status of the La Jolla Post Office. A public tribute will be held Tuesday for KPBS senior political editor Gloria Pinner, who died earlier this month. It's being held at the Museum of Contemporary Art San Diego on Prospect Street in La Jolla. The tribute will start at 4 p.m. on Tuesday. The group Common Cause has rallied some lawyers and volunteers to fight what they see as the problem of voter intimidation in San Diego. KPBS reporter Tom Fudge is here to explain. What is Common Cause doing, Tom?
Well, Dwayne, they're setting up what they call a command center and an election day hotline for people to call in November if they see or suspect voter intimidation at the polls.
Is there a problem with this in San Diego?
That's a good question, and it kind of depends on who you ask. Common Cause says there are organized groups going into polling places, questioning people about the way they identify themselves. They're challenging decisions by poll workers when it comes to very obscure election laws. Common Cause believes the net result is they're intimidating young and inexperienced voters. Now, the groups accused of this, one is called the Election Integrity Project, say this is nonsense. They say they're not intimidating people, they're simply observing in case voter fraud occurs.
So who's right?
Well, an official in the San Diego Registrar of Voters office told me in the June election, some poll workers did complain about the Election Integrity Project, saying their volunteers were overly aggressive, but no actual voters ever complained about being intimidated. By the way, Dwayne, this does become a partisan issue. Democrats tend to fear voter intimidation, while Republicans are mostly concerned about voter fraud.
KPBS reporter Tom Fudge. Although San Diego City Council is nonpartisan, it's evenly split between Republicans and Democrats, so whoever wins the District 1 seat will tip the party balance. Peggy Pico talks with the candidates.
The race for City Council District 1 in San Diego's northern area has taken on citywide importance. Whoever wins will tip the balance on the nonpartisan council toward Republican or Democratic. Joining me are District 1 candidates, incumbent City Council member Democrat Sherry Leitner and Republican challenger businessman Ray Ellis. Welcome to Evening Edition. Before we begin, I'd like to go over the ground rules once again with you. You each will have 1 minute to respond to the same question, and if you feel it's necessary, a 30-second rebuttal. Ray Ellis, you're going to start. The first question for you is San Diego Police Chief William Lansdowne has asked for a department increase of $11.5 million every year for the next 5 years. He said there's recent crime statistics that warrant this increase. Do you support his request?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us here this evening. And, I think the police department has done a wonderful job during these service cuts over the last decade almost in using technology and using innovation to better police our communities. But I think we've got to a point now where we do need to start adding back. And over a 5-year period seems reasonable, and that's only going to get us back to staffing that we were at in 2009. So we've got work to do here, and we've got to get our fiscal house in order. And that's why I've been a big supporter of pension reform, proper implementation of managed competition, and more importantly, economic growth, so we can raise the top line as well, so we can fund this. So yes, I would support it, but we've got to have the money for it.
Okay, and I'll come back to that because I want to ask you how, but Sherry, I want to give you a chance to ask you, do you support the budget increase totaling $60 million over the next 5 years?
Most likely, yes. I know we will be hearing this at council. The reason I say most likely, yes, public safety is number one. If the money's in the budget, it will go to public safety first and foremost. It is critical to protect our citizenry, and police, firefighters, lifeguards, very, very important. I have always supported them. It's why I supported ending the brownouts early. We did quite well with that, and since we've been adding firefighters and police academies, I suspect we'll be able to take this up quite readily.
I was going to ask you, and I'll come back to you as well, where do you think we can get the money to do an $11.5 million budget increase?
We are implementing pension reform. As you know, we have been doing that for several years now, and with that continuing, as well as our 5-year outlook looks reasonably good.
And what would you say? How would you find the money to fund that?
Well, first and foremost, we need to properly implement pension reform. I've been working on pension reform since 2008 on the pension board, saving taxpayers millions through some strategies that we put into place along the line there, reducing the interest rates on the infamous drop accounts, changing our investment strategy from active to passive, saving millions of dollars in investment fees. But I realized I could do more on city council. So that's one of the reasons I decided to run. So proper implementation of Proposition B, I think we can enter some other things into the discussion. But then we need to get more aggressive about implementing managed competition throughout all departments in the city.
I have more questions about
sure.
that.
Okay.
So we'll keep
that.
going
Good.
on that. Let me start, Cherry, with you. Traffic congestion is a major concern throughout the city, and especially in District 1. Do you support the idea to link Interstate 5 and 56? And what other plans do you have to alleviate traffic congestion?
There's a proposal right now to connect 5 and 56. Originally it was for direct connectors, which is something that was limiting growth in the Pacific Highlands Ranch neighborhood of Carmel Valley. So we want to see those connectors, but no private property, no private residential property to be taken for that. With respect to traffic congestion, the Mid-Coast trolley going forward to the Golden Triangle area, a lot of the aggressive plans that are in the Regional Transportation Plan 2050, we advocated on council for a transit-first solution. It is what I strongly support, and the number of things that we have actually already done in District 1, as I mentioned in our earlier interview, they will come to fruition here pretty soon. It is something we need to work on.
How about you?
To work on.
Okay, and how about you? Do you support that link, and what plans do you have to ease congestion?
I think we absolutely need to deal with the link there. Now, there are several alternatives that are out there. As the council member in District 1, I would be working with Sandag, working with the community groups to come up with the best solution. I believe Ms. Leitner's response to the ERR was no build. And, you know, we need to recognize that San Diego, our region, and therefore our city, is going to grow by over 40% in the next 40 years. So it's up to us to put leaders in place like myself who are willing to get out in front of that. Let's manage that. Let's don't be reactive to it. And we're going to have a lot of growth in District 1 in the eastern part of the district, which will be using the 56 westbound on a daily basis. And I live in that neighborhood, so I know it well. So I think we need to come up with a combination. I agree that we should not be taking private lands. I think that some of the flyovers are too robust. But we have some other solutions, and we need to navigate that and come to a solution for our communities.
Okay, you'd like to rebuttal?
Absolutely. The proposals that were brought forth by Caltrans all eliminated the Carmel Creek off-ramp from Highway 56. And that was a major concern to the community. It was something that was voiced repeatedly over about 5 years by the community, that they wanted to retain that connection so there would not be drive-by traffic through the neighborhood. We have other instances here in the city where we need improvements, much like the Highway 5-8 interchange, and even into La Jolla, we need better connectivity here. So the 556 with the 56, the dominant mode of transportation is west.
Okay, I have to cut you off. Your time is up for that rebuttal. I want to move on to talking about changes. This has been in the news quite a bit. You both know about it. UT San Diego owner and developer Doug Manchester has said he has talked with city council members and mayoral candidate Carl DeMaio about city development projects. When is it appropriate, and I'll start with you, Ray, when is it appropriate to discuss city projects with a major developer, and have you talked with Manchester about city projects?
Well, first and foremost, I have not talked to Mr. Manchester about any projects whatsoever. I do think, you know, I would have to defer to the city attorney, Jan Goldsmith, on navigating that. I think there is a fine line. I will say this, though. I think any time we can get stakeholders in the community together, whether it's community groups, whether it's people that are developing property, that if we can get them together and have a conversation early on and get the issues out on the table, I think we're going to end up with a better outcome for the communities and the neighborhoods. So I'm a full believer in collaboration and working together, but at the same time, we have to be absolutely cognizant of all the rules and regulations and laws that impact that. So I think we need to be careful there.
Sherry, have you met with Mr. Manchester, and when do you think it's appropriate for developers to bring their interest to the City Council?
I have not met with Mr. Manchester. I have not had that opportunity. I do know that I have met with members of the community. I've met with developers. I have an open door policy. You do not have to be a campaign contributor in order to have access to my office. And so if developers have concerns, they're welcome. I always make clear to them that they need to get the approval of the community going forward. They need to actively work with the community to gain my support for a project. And I've worked with a number of developers in that way. I would like to compliment especially the Flower Hill Mall and the Irvine Company for working very closely with the community to achieve approval for their projects.
Okay, we have 2 minutes left, 1 minute for each of you. My final question, and we'll start with you, Sherry, is
yes.
What is the most important citywide issue you think we're going to face in the council next year, and how would you tackle it? 1 minute.
We have several choices. Definitely pension reform. We want to make sure that continues, and that hopefully we won't have too many what would you call it, roadblocks that pop up. But the council is committed, along with, I would assume, the new mayor, to making sure that happens. It is the will of the people, and that should help greatly with our budgetary issues going forward. We do have to continue on with managed comp. That is absolutely correct, and we have a number in the pipeline, but we have 4 or 5 more that could be initiated come the first of the year.
All
so
right.
Look forward to that and getting public safety, neighborhood services, rec centers, everything back on par.
After that, and you, Mr. Ellis, you have 1 minute to respond, and to that question, what you think the biggest issue facing City Council is?
Well, I think we still need to aggressively attack the financial issues facing the city. I view the role of a council member is to create the best value for taxpayers and for our citizens. And by doing that, we need to aggressively implement the pension reform initiative. Let's get that done. Let's go after managed competition much more aggressively. We passed that over 6 years ago, and we've only done 5 exercises. And we need to have more of a sense of urgency on that to move that initiative forward. And the other part, I've created jobs in my own businesses, and I want to have a better focus on economic growth. Let's work with our business community. Let's treat them as a partner so we can grow our economy. That will increase revenues to the city as well. So I think we've got great opportunities, and I hope to have the opportunity to exercise those.
All right. Thank you both. We are out of time. City Council Member Sherry Leitner and Council Candidate Ray Ellis, thanks so much for talking with us today.
Thank you, Peggy. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next news hour. A Seattle medical center takes lessons from auto manufacturing to cut costs. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
When developer Doug Manchester bought the UT San Diego, some assumed he was really after prime real estate at the Mission Valley site. Whatever the motive, it's clear Manchester now wants to reprise the days when media owners had real clout in shaping events. KPBS investigative reporter Meetha Sharma explains in the second part of her 3-part series.
Like all newspapers, the UT San Diego has had a lousy 5 years with shrinking revenue, falling circulation, and budget cuts. But CEO John Lynch believes he can reverse the decline.
A lot of people think we're crazy because we're probably the only people in the whole country reinvesting in newspaper.
He thinks the paper can once again be a player.
This newspaper was really very active in changing history here in San Diego. Jack Murphy in bringing the Padres to San Diego and bringing the Chargers to San Diego and building Qualcomm Stadium, with Neil Morgan collaborating with Pete Wilson and Ernie Hahn to build the entire Gaslamp Center. And for the last many years, the newspaper has been AWOL in terms of leadership.
The leadership Lynch speaks of includes king-making. Almost as soon as Doug Manchester bought the paper last December, he and Lynch met with San Diego mayoral candidate Carl DeMaio at Manchester's hotel, the Grand Del Mar. 6 months later, DeMaio and city council candidates Scott Sherman and Ray Ellis met with Manchester. Lynch and Manchester also gave DeMaio a boost in 2 front-page editorials.
We felt very strongly that we needed a mayor who would lead economically out of the morass that San Diego is in.
Manchester's endorsement of DeMaio raises questions about what he might expect in return if the man he wants as mayor is elected. An iNewsSource KPBS investigation last month showed the financial and political ties between the two men go back a decade. Manchester's plans for San Diego's waterfront go back even further. Soon after he built his first Manchester Grand Hyatt Tower 20 years ago, Lynch says Manchester eyed the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal as the next coastal land to develop. Right after he bought the UT, the paper touted its vision on the front page to build a sports complex and hotels. Manchester says that vision is not connected to his support for DeMaio, nor does it mean he personally wants to build on that land.
Whether or not it's a stadium there, whether or not it's a sports arena, whether or not whatever it is, I don't have any control over that. Nor I can put it on record with you that nor do I want to have anything to do with that with regards to development. If he thinks that, if Filner or anybody else thinks that I'm backing DeMaio for maybe developing that, I have no interest in that. Nor would I have any interest in ever doing anything ever again with the Port of San Diego.
The iNewsSource KPBS investigation found that Manchester retained stock in Host Hotels and Resorts when he sold his waterfront hotels to the conglomerate in 2008. Was Manchester using the paper for financial gain on the waterfront?
If Host shares increased in value, and I have such a little amount, there could be an opportunity for me to increase, have the shares increase. But I have so little shares that in compared, it's not a factor. It's immaterial.
Even so, the paper has strongly backed development of the 10th Avenue terminal. In August, Lynch sent San Diego Port Commissioner Scott Peters an email asking how he planned to vote on a multi-year lease with Dole Food Company. Lynch also wrote that the contract should contain a provision that would allow Dole to drop off its bananas in National City if the port goes away. The email says otherwise the UT will be forced to lead a campaign to disband the port. Peters says he viewed that last line as a threat.
The comment seemed intended to influence my vote.
Lynch said that line was not meant to intimidate.
It wasn't a threat. What it was a call to action for every politician, everyone serving this community, to realize that this was a giveaway of public property.
USC journalism professor Gabe Kahn says there is a long history of media owners with vast business holdings and political interests strutting their power to settle scores and promote agendas. But he says that could backfire.
That in no way helps the brand overall, and I don't think in the long run is going to help the business model of the newspaper.
But Lynch says it hasn't hurt it yet. He claims circulation numbers are up.
Amitha Sharma reporting. Tomorrow, Amitha speaks one-on-one with UT CEO John Lynch about his vision for San Diego. Gusty winds and warmer temperatures ahead, and a red flag warning for high fire danger tomorrow through early Saturday. Here's a look at the forecast. Game 1 of the World Series is underway in San Francisco tonight. Former Padres manager Bruce Bochy now leading the National League champion Giants against the Detroit Tigers. They're in the 5th inning. The score, 5-0 Giants. We've got something scary for you as Halloween approaches. Stacey Allen's Theater Alive company is putting on Evil Dead the Musical. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando takes us backstage to see what goes into this musical comedy based on a cult film trilogy.
Meet director Stacey Allen.
I'm looking for someone to solve our problems, someone to come in and just be Ash.
Groovy.
He's perfect Ash, just down to the T.
I'm Billy Blair, and I'm going to be playing Ash, who was originally played by the legendary Bruce Campbell. Whew, what's not going to be fun about playing Ash? Name's Ash. Housewares. Come get some.
Ash is an S-Mart employee and college student who spends spring break having to fight off his demonically possessed friends.
Actually, this production is a combination of Evil Dead 1 and 2 with a lot of lines from Army of Darkness thrown in, which is the third film in the Evil Dead series. This is my boomstick!
The room we're doing it in is a small room. It only seats 50 people, so it's very small and intimate. And then I thought, well, you know what? What if I staged this and made the audience feel like they're in the cabin?
What could possibly go wrong with 5 college students breaking into an old secluded cabin in the woods where no one knows where we are?
We decided for this show for the Evil Dead, since there's a lot of blood spatter and stuff, that we should put a super soaker built into it so it can shoot blood out the front of it.
Yeah, we got the first 2 rows reserved for splatter zone.
You can see there's a squirt gun built into the inside of it.
This feels very good.
If you're a fan of the movie, you're going to be a fan of this show because we're doing everything we can to keep it like the film.
Shop smart. Shop S-Mart. You got that?
KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando. Evil Dead, the musical, runs through Halloween at the 10th Avenue Theater. Tonight's stories are on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.